6 o'clock. Before I open the meeting, I'd just like to remind people that the meeting is being recorded and streamed live on the internet. So all care is taken to maintain your privacy. If you're a visitor in the public gallery or member of the public submitting a question, you might be recorded. Nala kajik karak wajik mort kayan karak nija walilap buja wejinang wajak karajan wenyitting bula yeah. We acknowledge the Wajak people as the traditional owners of the Greater Fremantle Walyalup area, and we recognise that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still important today. Attendance apology, leaves of absence. I think we have an apology from Councillor Thompson, who couldn't get back. Thank you, Jetstar. And everyone else is here. Oh, and Councillor Moughlin. And I would note that Councillor Moughlin's absence tonight is because he is ending his 7-year tenure as chair of the Fremantle College board, and they're having a final event tonight at which they wanted to acknowledge him. And I thought, given the service that he has given there, that's a very good reason not to join us tonight. So in absentia, I'd like to acknowledge the amount of work he's done with Fremantle College. Applications for leaves of absence. Councillor Graham from the 27th of November to 9 December. Can I move these together? And Councillor Groom from the 5th of December to the 11th of December. So I'll move those. May I have a seconder? Councillor Lang. All those in favour? That's unanimous.
I'm just trying to check my leave of absence in December. I'm not sure I included the 14th. I can't check it. It's not in my diary. So
Shall we just,
do
you want to give us
move
the
it for
dates
the 14th
again?
and just to make sure it's in there.
Okay, so Councillor Sullivan for 14th of December. So I'll move that, seconded by Councillor Lang. All those in favour? Any other leaves of absence while we're on it? Nope. Are there any disclosures of interest by members in relation to the agenda tonight? Councillor Pemberton first. Or not? Any other disclosures of interest in relation to the agenda? All good. All right. There were no responses to previous public questions taken on notice, so we'll go through to public question time. For those of you who haven't been at public question time before, we ask you to come up to the microphone. You'll press the button on the right to turn it on, or Melody might do that for you now. You've got 3 minutes and we'll time it. There'll be a little beep to let you know 3 minutes is up, and we'd appreciate it if you could kind of wrap up when you get to the 3-minute mark. After public question time, we will likely reorganise the agenda so that the items you've spoken on or are particularly interested in come earlier up in the agenda so that you've got an opportunity to stay on. Otherwise, obviously, you can tune in online. So the first person I've got is Lauren Benson on PC 2214, which I believe is the Ainslie Road development.
Hi, I'm Lauren Benson, an architect at Ropes and Architects. We're seeking approval for a modest upper floor addition of a 1-bedroom and study over an existing ground floor renovation. Our overshadowing non-compliance is not due to the design being excessively scaled, but due to the significant slope of the site and the need to share the overshadowing allowance with 8 Rule Street. As detailed in our previous deputation, the overshadowing falls to the neighbour's side setback zone towards the centre of the block, leaving the access to the northern light and their backyard unaffected. The current overshadowing variation is now at about 5%. We have submitted 2 rounds of amended drawings to continue to reduce this minor variation. To summarise the changes made to date, we increased the balcony setback from 1.5 to 4.1 metres, an overall increase of 2.8 metres. Reduced the first floor addition's height by 200 millimetres. This reduced the overshadowing variation from approximately 10% to 7%. Following last council meeting, we took the recommendations of the councillors on board. They requested we look to reduce this overshadowing variation a little further. We actually made a big step here and we dropped the height of the wall around the stair by over 1 metre. We also further reduced the wall heights over the first floor study by another 260 millimetres by swapping the box gutter to an eaves gutter. Collectively, this reduction in wall height throughout is 0.5 metre to a metre, and our overshadowing variation has reduced from 10% originally to 7.6% to now about 5%. We meet the design principles as outlined in the Planning Officer's report, and we believe an overshadowing variation of 5% is minor. We were respectful in the initial design and have continued to make changes to appease the neighbour at 2 Ainsley Road. Thank you. And are there any questions about the proposal?
That's fine. Thanks, Lauren.
Thank you.
The next person is Kirsten Norland in relation to FPOL 221110.
Hi everybody, my name's Kirsten. How you going? When my husband dropped me off in the car just before, he said try not to be too whiny, so I'm doing a Nancy Pelosi with my notes. Rather than read them, and for fear of being too whiny, I'll just basically give you my key points, and this is in relation to the Stevens Reserve issue. I unfortunately missed the planning meeting a couple of weeks ago because I was away, so that was probably a better forum for this, but I just wanted to say yet again that I feel like the consultation process has been a bit dodgy. The survey was really a bit questionable in terms of its process as well. So from the point of view of a dog walker, I just feel like for myself and my community of people, we have been asked to give our opinions, and those opinions have been blatantly ignored. So be it. I understand that the club has got some very genuine concerns and some very genuine issues, and I do empathise with their position. But what concerns me is there's been absolutely no effort at compromise between the club and the community of dog walkers at Stevens Reserve. And that's the thing that really frustrates me the most. And I do wonder why it is that we have had no efforts at compromise between the community of dog walkers and the cricket club. And just simple things, like I just don't understand why really simple compromises like the club putting the temporary mesh fencing around the pitch when the cricket season's on. It seems such a simple fix to such a problem, and it would make a lot of the angst go away. So it's all just a bit mystifying to me why we haven't had any consultation or any compromise or whatever. Anyway, I just think that the political and financial weight of the club should not override the needs of the community at large. Having said that, I really applaud the proposal to fence in the Knutsford Park. I think that's a fantastic idea. I have concerns. I'm not sure if it's reticulated or not. It is super, okay, which is great. That's a fantastic proposal, and I fully support that. But perhaps even more importantly, I really do believe that the idea of developing a strategy that addresses citywide dog management and exercise is an excellent idea. I really fully support that initiative. But I'm sure you'll understand that the dog walking community feels a little bit cynical about the process, having gone through a quote-unquote consultation period earlier this year. So my questions to the council are this. Therefore, why can't the cricket club enter into a compromise with the community and start by installing temporary mesh fencing around the pitch? Can the council articulate who will be involved in developing the proposed strategy? Who will be involved in developing that strategy that will represent the concerns of the dog walking community? And will their input be recognised this time? Thank you for the time. I hope I wasn't too whiny. Thank you.
Not whiny at all. All right, and the final person I have listed is Tanu Hudson with a question, I think, about an item that's not on the agenda.
No, is that okay? All right, cool. My question's actually about J-Shed. It's in 2019. The council put out some EOIs into the building, and these expressions of interest, the successful tenants or the successful applicants had to show that they had community engagement, space activation, showed appreciation for the environment and the spiritual, indigenous kind of spiritual appreciation of the land. And currently, no one can actually enter some of the units, and I'm pretty sure it's meant to be a public space. There was talks at one stage of it becoming an Indigenous arts centre, but from what I've seen, that seems to be no longer happening. All the current tenants, I think, have it for $100 a week, which is pretty good for that spot. And there seems to be little movement. Some, I think, have even had it for 25 years. I'm guessing I'm asking, will the council review the current tenancy, make sure that they're keeping up to their part of the agreement, and maybe even re-advertise for expressions of interest so that maybe other artists and things can get an opportunity to at least apply for that space, and the people that are there can also apply. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. We might need to take it on notice. I'll just check whether Director of City Business wants to comment. Oh, we will take that on notice if it's all right. Thank you. Yeah, cool. All right, that's everyone I've got listed. So unless the other people in the gallery would like to tell me that they would like to speak, I might just ask what item you were here for, those who haven't spoken, just so that I can maybe bring it to the front of the agenda. Oh, great. Good. It's because it's enjoyable, right? Yeah. Good. Excellent. We'll try and make it as entertaining as possible for you. All right. So I might, I'll move through the rest of the early agenda, and then we might go to the planning item and then the dog item. So we don't have any petitions that I know of, deputations or special deputations. No presentations, so I'll move that we confirm the minutes of OCM dated 26 October. There's a second of that. Councillor Graham, any comments first? Nope, all those in favour? That's unanimous. Is there any elected member communication? I'm going with no. So that will bring us to the reports and recommendations from committees. So we'll go to PC 2214. Councillor Jones, I don't know if you want to, as chair, move the amended officer's recommendation and speak to that.
Yeah, it's not actually an amended. We need to move the motion first and then amend the motion. It's not rewritten totally. So I'll move the officer's recommendation, which is on page 28, and then subsequently move the amendment.
Okay, so seconded by Councillor Groom.
And there was a minor amendment on page 30. The applicants have reduced the overshadowing by 9 square metres. Bear in mind the committee did recommend approval, but it was a 4-3 vote, with a suggestion to the applicants that they might look at reducing the overshadowing even further. They've done so, so I would hope that would satisfy the majority of councillors. So I'll move the amendment, which is simply to change the date of the application, which is on page 30, to change the date from the 28th of September to the 4th of November.
Seconded by Councillor Groom. Any discussion on that? I would assume not. Nope. All those in favour of the amendment? Great, that's unanimous. And back to the item as amended. Any further speakers? Councillor Groom.
Yeah, I want to acknowledge the work done by the proponents to consider our comments, and I think the change it's achieved does create more opportunity for the owner of the joining block to maximise their northern sun, and I think is probably a good compromise, noting that it is a complex site. So happy to support it.
Okay, Councillor Lang. Thank you.
Again, to the applicants, the planning meeting, I voted against this item, and I'm really pleased to see you guys have gone away and made a change. And I think now with this change in place, I'm comfortable and happy to support this application. So thanks very much for being so helpful.
Councillor Sullivan.
What they said.
Incredible brevity. Councillor Jones, did you wish to close? Or no? I would just like to also acknowledge the efforts made. So we'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? I think that appears to be unanimous. Good. That was a quick night for you. All right. So we might, with your indulgence, then go to the Virginia Ryan item, the item FPOL 221110. So I'll move the officer's recommendation. Can I have a seconder for Councillor Archibald? Probably should have asked you if you wanted to move it as chair of FPOL, but there you go. So I'm moving what the committee recommended. Yeah, committee recommendation. So I might wait to speak. If Councillor Archibald, did you want to speak first? Or?
No, only that I'm supportive of the recommendation, and in fact, I'm supportive of the amendment that's likely to be proposed as well. I feel that for a while we need to test something slightly different, and we've also got a part of that motion to commit to doing further work so that we can really have a good look across the city at how we manage some of these issues, which are not restricted necessarily to Stevens Reserve. So I think it is timely that we have a comprehensive look at the whole issue across the board. Thank you.
Thanks. Are there other people who wanted to speak? Councillor Sullivan?
I think Councillor Lang.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks. Sort of question actually for the officers. Do we know what the cost is for removal of the gates and installing of the new chicane gates might be?
We're just looking.
Thank you, through the chair. I don't know the breakdown of the cost, but it had been costed and included in the budget that was included in the report, the $60,000. I couldn't tell you the itemised listing.
If I recall, Director, I think there was some discussion of needs to upgrade the path up and down to Stevens Reserve anyway, and that had all been wrapped into a bit of a project. So it might not be a true cost of just the chicanes. $9,000, apparently. Councillor Lang, did you want to follow on from that? Okay, cool. Sorry, Councillor Sullivan, back to you then.
Thanks. A question first. The proposed gates around the corner of the Swanbourne Street Small Park, the fencing, is that possible for that to sort of encroach into the reserve area just to maximise the amount of space that's behind the fence? Obviously, it's similar to what I was suggesting for Virginia Ryan. If that was going to be fenced, that we actually don't necessarily, need to strictly abide by the cadastral boundary, but could possibly potentially add more space to that park inside the fence by encroaching into the road reserve.
Thank you. Through the chair, we can. We've just got to be cognizant of the proximity to the curb line, and I think there's a note in there as well about certain trees and actually meandering through and around trees. But we'll take the path of least resistance and we'll try and maximise the area within the park.
Thanks. Yeah, so you might need to switch yours off. While I'm happy to support what FPOL have come forward with, there's a reluctance in me to see the sort of money spent on changes from one gate type system to another gate type system and the like, because it feels like we're inventing solutions that won't answer the problem. And the problem is responsible dog ownership and control. And I'm not particularly convinced that continually putting forward different solutions for how the edge of the park works is going to actually change behaviour of the dog owners, and or change the behaviour of the cricket club either, in terms of what they can be doing. And it seems that we obviously have a difficult problem, and we seem to be grasping at sort of solutions that I just don't think are going to make any significant difference at all. And so the cost that we will throw at these problems thinking that they're solutions is troublesome for me. Whilst this one is not outrageously expensive, the notion of building lots of fences around the place because responsible dog owners can't control their dogs doesn't seem to be the right solution to me. The other thing I would say is that we've had ongoing issues, in a sense, up at the Monument Reserve in terms of dog owners using that space as an off-lead space. And there is a degree of tolerance seemingly allowed in that when the reserve's not heavily used or hardly used at all, perhaps that's not that big an issue. But we do have a dog exercise area directly diagonally opposite. And what's clear to me is that dog owners are saying, well, I don't want to use that. I want to go where I want to be, which is in the reserve that has a really nice view, or the reserve where my mates are and the like. And so there is a little bit of degree of, can I call it arrogance in a sense, of we have a problem in making available lots of space for dog exercise. But there are people in our community, and it's a small minority of dog owners, who continuously ignore what it is to be a responsible dog owner. And personally, we need to find a better way to ensure that that minority are not wrecking it for the majority of dog owners or for the majority of other people utilising beaches, parks, and the like. And so I'm not convinced that we're landing on the long-term solutions, but I will support FBOL's position on this.
Thanks, Councillor Sullivan. Councillor Jones?
This is quite an unusual problem. And if you have a social problem such as, say, littering, and you bring in measures to reduce it, and you reduce it by 99%, I think you've done pretty well. And similarly with antisocial behaviour in the streets, if you could bring in measures and reduce it by 99%, you think you've done okay. Well, if we reduce this by 99%, we've still got a problem, because it just takes one dog and one claw and one owner. So I really think we have to keep looking at this. There must be some kind of mobile fencing that tows behind the lawnmower or something that goes around the wicket, because there is no other solution. I mean, dogs can get in there at night. You know, stray dogs can get in there without their owners. And if we don't have somebody up there 100% of the time fining people, I mean, I agree with what's being proposed, but I still think we need to keep pressure on the club to tell them that the only solution that's going to be 100% work is a fence, and nothing else will guarantee to solve the problem.
Councillor Pemberton?
Thank you. And yes, I entirely agree with what Councillor Jones just said in terms of we do need to make this a problem that we all collectively solve, as opposed to just one party or one group of users resolving it to placate another group of users. And I do think that the solutions being proposed at the moment are a good step for us to take, so that the clubs can take a step towards resolving this as well. And that's where I hope the conversation goes from this. And I do acknowledge that the staff have been proposing lightweight fencing for around the pitches for some time, but I do think we need to dig in our heels and say, we've done our bit. It's now your turn. And so that's why I'm supporting this at this stage. I also wanted to just comment with regards to the monument and other things. What's a really interesting thing to observe is when the cricket matches are on, when the red flags are up and people can't use Stevens Reserve, you then see people with dogs off leads at the monument and Boo Park, and basically they're going to the nearest large green space. That's a big part of why I've suggested the fencing around the Knutsford Reserve, because it is within walking distance to Stevens, which means when people arrive and discover they can't use it, they've got somewhere within easy walking distance to go, and that is still has that perceived benefit of being secure, that obviously is important to some dog owners. I also just wanted to say I'm really glad that this further work will be done on thinking about the strategy more holistically, because I do also note that we've got some really great grass facilities, large grass park facilities within close proximity that are existing dog off-lead areas, and the main point of difference with them is the fencing. So it certainly would be interesting to get some feedback through the review process and so on as to how important the fence issue is. And to that end, I think I want to really give my credit and thanks to the officers, because I do know that dog training classes have been procured by the city in order to be able to offer to our residents and so on. And I think that is a really important component. We need to educate the dog owners within our community. We need to teach them and help them to do the right thing, and we need to help them to make sure their dogs are doing the right thing. And I think to what Councillor Sullivan was talking about, yes, we can keep band-aiding, solutions left, right, and centre, but nothing's going to work compared to actually educating people and their dogs about the behaviour that's accepted and expected, I guess, in a big way. So I just wanted to note that and particularly thank the officers for pursuing that at last.
Councillor Lang.
Thanks. Yeah, from the community member, sorry, I forgot your name, mentioned that there's still no compromise from the cricket club here, and that's quite evident. And leading on from what Councillor Sullivan was saying, I'm wondering, we fix the gates, but then if, or Councillor Jones said, if one dog goes on the pitch, then what? We're going to get bombarded with emails again, and we've wasted $9,000 on an experiment. Recently, we were at Bayswater and Hillcrest Reserve, and I noted they had temporary fencing around their turf pitches. It exists, and I'm sure that in other countries around the world, temporary fencing exists. And I've Googled some, and it's here. I would be more inclined to spend $9,000 and contribute towards temporary fencing for the club than on a gate that I'm not convinced is going to work. And it's more important for Fremantle in the future as we increase density in the city. We're going to have to co-use our spaces more, and there's going to be more and more conflict. And that's something that's going to be happening around town. So I'm conscious of that. We certainly want to increase density, and we certainly need to look for better management options for co-using our green spaces. So my question is on this. I support most of it, and I'm wondering if we could split out the removal of the gates so we could vote on that separately.
Yeah, I'm happy to split that out if you want to vote on that separately. Perhaps I might speak on the item now, and then we can move to the amendment if there's no one else sort of in the queue. So to come to the issue of the fencing, so that has been proposed to the club a number of times. Their concern is that there's an operational cost associated with putting up and down the fencing. You know, I think we all think it's kind of common sense, and you know, I think we've prosecuted that a few times. I would suggest that if this motion goes forward tonight, we go back to that again as being something that we're interested in. The reason for the chicane gates, the club is strongly of the view that people controlled their dogs better during the period of trial where the gates were off. So I guess that's what has informed that particular management strategy. This is a compromise. So the club would very much prefer that this was a dog on lead area at all times. And have they made no bones about that? Like, I think we've heard that pretty loud and clear, but that's clearly not going to work for dog owners. So this is it's a compromise situation. And the issue of control, I don't think relates entirely to just the wickets. Like, I think it's more the pitches generally. It's, are you supervising your dog, and is your dog under your control right now? Whether it's digging a hole in the outfield or running on the wickets. So we shouldn't probably focus our attentions entirely on the wicket area. This is a grade 1 cricket pitch regulated by the WACA, and they do come and inspect it and could very easily say you can no longer play grade 1 cricket here, which I think would be a pretty big loss for Fremantle to have such a significant number of state cricket players playing here and loving playing here. I think ultimately, you know, it'd be a fantastic area to see redeveloped as a club, you know, and I think this is part of the vision where state women cricketers can play as well right now. There are no female change rooms, so that's not going to happen. But, you know, this is something I think we want to retain in Fremantle. We don't want to lose a premier sporting club. So we do need to compromise, and this is a compromise. The broader strategy, I completely agree, needs to be driven by good community engagement and good councillor engagement. Certainly, I think all elected members would agree that dogs is an issue that will get everyone talking in the community. I'm quite interested in the fencing of the Knutsford Street Reserve in terms of almost being a trial site of a fenced dog off-lead area, on the basis that talking to various officers and people in the community, there's some people who think it's fantastic to have small dog off-lead areas for them to run around, be free, but there's also like the impacts of that on the turf, those kind of things. It's actually probably good for us to understand how that's going to work and whether it's going to work well as we go into the broader consultation about what do we want to do for dog exercise areas across the city. Because some people would say it's actually better not to constrain, them in small sites and therefore erode the grass and everything. So hopefully that's quite informative. I don't think it currently reads as a dog off-lead area, that reserve. I don't think people would naturally think, yeah, I can let my dog run around there. So it should hopefully help to defray the impact on Stevens. I might move to the amendment then. So I've drafted an amendment. So at the moment, we're unable, or the cricket club is unable to require that dogs are on lead while the matting is down on the wickets, which basically only happens in summer when it's raining. So it's not a very frequent occurrence, but it is a $10,000 piece of equipment that if it gets one dog claw through it, is basically ruined. So the amendment's up there. I don't know if anyone would like to second that. Councillor Archibald. So this just gives us the ability, if we want to execute on it, which we don't currently have, to include it being dog on lead just when the covers are down on the wickets. At the moment, there needs to be a game or training underway for us to require it to be dog on lead. So that's seconded. Is there any discussion on that? Councillor Pemberton.
Thank you. I can understand the logic as to why this has been suggested, and I really do acknowledge the implications of when dogs run across it is a real issue. I guess what I'm concerned about is the ability to actually enforce this, the ability to actually implement it. So, I mean, for starters, when this would also mean that the red flags would need to go up so that people who are approaching with their dogs know they need to put them on the lead. There's no good kind of coming up and then discovering the thing is down and then interpreting that means you need to put the dog on a lead. I also note that how this will actually then be enforced and so on, whether or not there's it's going to require rangers to come and police it, and how we do that, how we know, because it's so random when the rain is going to come, or whether or not they're concerned about the pitch and so on. For me, again, it sort of goes to what has already been raised, which is this is again us doing everything for the club as opposed to the club doing something to help themselves. And I would suggest that this is probably an unenforceable requirement, from us, and we're not going to be able to actually act on it effectively. And it would actually be better if the club was more active and did put a fencing around it if they really want to protect their $10,000 tarp.
Councillor Archibald.
Thank you. I do support this, and I support it because I think if once it goes out, if people see that it's out on the ground, then they should automatically start thinking, okay, the dogs have to be on lead. It's a message, and I think there are many things that we do which we can't enforce entirely, but we do it because it sends messages and how we want people to behave. I just also wanted to mention that, as the Mayor said, that we have a state level sporting group on this oval. We have a state level football team on Fremantle Oval. They don't have dogs at all on that oval. I think at least we're trying to share this ground with people with dogs. I think the real solution is going to come out of the large community consultation, where we'll look at finding other places where we can offset the problem. And the comment was also made about once Stevens Reserve is on lead, the dogs go everywhere else. That is certainly true, and they go particularly to the fenced-in primary school grounds. That's already becoming a problem. I think Beaconsfield's already banned dogs at their ground. The Whitegum Valley School, the principal has now said you can't take dogs there from 7:30 in the morning until 5:30 at night. That's had an impact on parents in how they can walk their children to school. They can no longer take the dog into the grounds. They have to leave it outside the fence. So it is a major issue, and I think if people want to use Stevens Reserve, because it's a state level ground, they just have to pay more attention. And if the covers are out, it's not just even a matter of getting a hole in the covers. The moisture that goes through is what causes the problem. And even I remember last year the president sent me an email saying they were out there with hair dryers to try and get it dry in time for the match, and they were worried that they wouldn't be able to get it done in time. So they have to have this pitch suitable for a ball going, they mentioned this at FPOL, 150 kilometres an hour. It's not an insignificant thing. It has to be correct. So, and as the Mayor said, they have to maintain it at that standard to stay in the game of a state level competition at that site. So it's not just an ordinary oval or an ordinary sporting ground like Bruce Lee Oval and all these others, which are community grounds, and plenty of people in the community go there. Dog owners go there. It's a very mixed use on those grounds, and nobody has a problem with it. It's just this particular reserve has a particular need for it, and that is state level cricket. So I think it makes a big difference in how we approach it. So I certainly do support this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lang.
Understand the intent of this. My first reaction is quite confusing, and also, as Councillor Pemberton said, it's probably quite difficult to police. I'm wondering also, it doesn't really prescribe when the wet weather covers can go on or off. I mean, would the cricket club lay them down more often than not so they can restrict dog use on the oval? Is something else that I'm considering. And then when the cost is raised, these are $10,000. It seems like a high risk activity to be putting these down, and again not putting a fence around it. I keep coming back to the fence being a solution for now the covers and the pitch. Based on that, I'm probably unlikely to support this, mainly because it is so quite confusing for the dog owners to turn up to the oval and then you need to go to the other oval, and it's just not very clear policy.
Councillor Sullivan?
Yeah, I will support this. The reality of covers is you don't put them down willy-nilly. You put them down when the game is a day away or is in progress. That's the only time you use covers typically. And the reason being is you actually want the grass to grow, so you're not going to put a cover over the pitches that you're trying to resurrect in time for the scheduled matches coming up. That's how it works. You put the covers over those pitches before a game and during a game, not just typically the pitch that you're playing on, but also the nearby pitches, because if those areas get muddy, if they get wet, then during the game, you end up digging up next week's pitch or next fortnight's pitch. So the reality is they're not going to get used inappropriately, and they are going to get used when there are games either immediately about to start or actually in progress. And I don't think that's an unreasonable thing. I'm thinking, how many days a year are we actually talking about realistically that the covers are going to be down? It is not that many.
If there's no one else, I might close on the amendment. Councillor Busick?
Yeah, look, I'd just like to add that Councillor Lang and Pemberton make a good point. There is also merit in this amendment. Could we not perhaps seek to contribute the $9,000 to the cost of a fence?
I might get an officer to respond to that because I believe that is something we've done or offered to do in the past. Anyone remember?
Thank you. Through the chair, I understand that we've already funded and made provision for the club to have start pickets and fencing. Sorry, we've previously funded the club to be able to provide pickets and fencing for erection around the pitch.
We kind of can't enter into debate, but perhaps you want to clarify whether we mean the string that's there or whether we mean an actual protective barrier.
Yeah, I don't think it's a full protective barrier. It's just a demarcation.
Yep. Councillor Lorver?
Yeah, I'm kind of falling on this on the side of where Councillor Lang and Pemberton are, because these
wickets and these pitches are off prohibited dog areas currently. And so there should be some effort to keep dogs off of them. And I just really, I mean, I'm fine with doing all the other things that we're proposing to do here, but I would just, as Councillor Lang articulated, really like to see the club itself come forward, because that would solve the problem. And I worry about the confusion on this. People rocking up and just doing whatever they want because they don't know, or so I think we might be creating more problems for ourselves when the club just starts calling us to police the dogs for them, instead of actually fixing the problem.
Okay, I think I might close on this. Councillor Vusic, I don't know, did you want to say anything beyond your question, or I can't just...
There's merit to just about every councillor's view on this, but it would seem to me that we would, we ought to explore a proper fence that would be a solution, for today and next year and the year after. And so I think we need to engage with the club. There's, when I talk about a fence, I'm assuming it's going to be a proper fence rather than a barrier. So that's where I was heading with it.
Thank you. Councillor Kamada.
Sorry.
Don't be
yeah,
sorry.
I was going to try and avoid. I think it's been summed up beautifully by everyone, and it's good to hear everyone's opinions. But there's having a fence around the wicket is really impractical in the preparation, even in terms of watering. They've got 2 wickets there, so they'll need 2. They've got their east wicket and their west wicket. And David Davenport, made it quite clear when he spoke, and also in an email that I've got here, about the issues with having a fence. And you get a lot of wind there, so it's got to be a heavy fence. To stake it into the ground, you could damage reticulation. It's, as Councillor Archibald said, this is just it's a cricket ground, and it's a very particular type of preparation that you need. And so it's problematic sure, let's explore it, but I think it's going to be an issue that is unlikely to be taken up by the cricket club. And I do recall David Davenport saying that he was prepared to work with the people in the area to ensure that they were still able to use it where practical. So I'll certainly be supporting this, and I just think we have to keep in mind that this is a unique situation and that we need a longer term strategy as well. Thank you.
I'm going to try and close on this one. So Councillor Graham's really tempted to say something. I guess to summarise, it is a facility that is shared, but is also an A-grade cricket ground. This week, it is hosting the second 11 interstate match. This week, it rained over the weekend, one might recall. The wicket covers went down, and I hope you all saw the photos. And we've got footage of it, and it's just appalling that people are prepared to let their dogs run all over the wicket covers. Like, they were literally tearing up and down the wicket covers, and that's why I drafted the amendment, because I thought we actually at the moment do not have any further controls over this, and I really don't want this coming back to us. Like, I don't want to be reviewing this policy again in 6 months' time because we need to add a further control. The red flag system, as I understand it, does work at Stevens. If people get up to Stevens, they see the red flag is up, they go, oh, there's cricket stuff going on there. I know my dog has to be on a lead, or I'll go somewhere else. So this is a very occasional thing where, as Councillor Sullivan says, there's a significant match coming up. It's raining, so probably if you're leaving the house with the dog in the rain, you might think about, in the cricket season, probably not going to Stevens. And it just, at the moment, our only control is the control that's not working at the moment, which is to say the wickets is a dog prohibited area. It is, and it's not a control that's working. I've had quite a lot of engagement with the rangers and sort of the different conversations that they have with dog owners on Stevens. I think, some of them have great conversations with dog owners going, please, please, there's only a few bad dog owners. The rest of us are absolutely doing the right thing. And I've sat up there and watched, and most people are absolutely doing the right thing. But there are people who, and I love the idea that the training dog owner training will work, but some people seem unwilling to do anything other than quite, extreme feedback when they're told that their dog is on a dog prohibited area or that they're not controlling them adequately. So I just think this is an extra control that we can put in place now. We can do it while the policy is in front of us, and it will hopefully mean we don't need to revisit it. And it's to prevent a problem that is indeed very real. As to the fencing, I think Councillor Kamada summed it up really well. It is challenging for them to get fences. I mean, think about the storm we had on Friday. You can't do a little lightweight fence and expect it to still be there 5 minutes later. If anything, it's fallen over and dug the hole in the wicket that you were hoping your dog wouldn't. So, you're talking about quite heavyweight equipment, numbers of people to get it up and down. These clubs are primarily run by volunteers, so to me it just seems, a reasonable compromise. Anyway, I will put the amendment to a vote. All those in favour of the amendment? And against? So that's carried with Councillors Lorva, Lang and Pemberton against. Correct. Okay, so back to the item now as amended. Any further discussion? Okay, well, let's put this item to the vote. All those in favour of the item? Oh, yeah, sorry, you're right, I'm splitting out. Thank you, Councillor Lang. I told you I was a little tired tonight. To A. Correct? Yep. So I'm going to move the item, all of the item apart from 2A. Everyone clear on what I'm doing? Yep. So I will move that, put that to a vote. All those in favour? That's unanimous. And then I will separate out 2A and move that. All those in favour? Yep. And against? So that's carried with Councillors Sullivan and Lang against. Thank you. That was just one item. Okay, so I might go back to the agenda order now unless there are any objections to me doing that. Nope. All right. We have two planning items there. Do people want to speak on either of those, 9 or 10? Nope. I might move PC 2219 and 221110 on block. So move that and get a seconder. Councillor Groom. All those in favour? There you go. Planning Committee are still on their job well. So those are both carried unanimously. And so we go to FPOL. So I'll move the officer's recommendation FPOL 22116, which is the Destination Marketing Working Group membership. Now I'll remind elected members, I'll get a seconder, but I'll remind you that the names are in a confidential attachment. So if you wish to discuss individual names, we will need to go behind closed doors. So perhaps if I could just get a sense of if we are likely to want to do that, because we may move it to the back of the agenda if we need to. No, okay. So seconded by Councillor Archibald, and you wish to speak on it? Oh, sorry, Councillor. So we'll now discuss it then with the assumption of the names that were in the attachment inserted. Councillor Groom, sorry. The light and the person are not lining up in my field of vision.
I've got a question which probably segues into a comment. So I guess for staff, I'm wondering a bit of feedback. So the 3 people that we are considering extending membership to are all from the same sector. So whilst I'm not opposed to extending the membership, I don't understand why we wouldn't be seeking diversity in doing that. And I'm just kind of wondering some reflection on the thinking around that.
Through the chair, so all of the proposed members are from the hospitality and accommodation industries. we were more focused on the particular skill sets that those individuals had. So rather than being hospitality-based skill sets, it was more around brand and marketing-based skill sets, retail-based skill sets. So it's the skills that those particular proponents have rather than the sector that they're working in.
Okay, so I'll get into some commentary on that. So that's not what our documents say. Our documents talk about the sectors we're targeting. And, I was noting that one sector, for example, is Indigenous businesses, and reflecting that maybe that would be a sector that we would be needing to reach out to kind of get nominations. And so I guess I've got some reservations about us extending a committee and then filling it up with a sector that's actually really good at looking after itself. And I take the skills set comment on board, but it's not the way the terms of reference is currently structured. So I'm kind of reluctant to support this, whilst I have no problem with a larger committee and bringing in a broader skill set. We're already getting kind of kickback from parts of the community that we support hospitality all the time. And so I think to, load up the destination marketing committee more to that extent with people who are all three from big businesses who are well able to look after for themselves and kind of promote themselves already. I'm not convinced that we really get the diversity we need, noting your comments on the skill set.
Thank you. Councillors? I might hesitate to comment, but so tricky when you go out for expressions of interest and then you get expressions of interest and they perhaps weren't the exact expressions of interest, but you also think, well, that's great that there's some people who want to contribute and have energy and enthusiasm for being part of an unpaid working group. Unpaid, isn't it? Yeah. From across Freo. So, I agree with what you're saying in terms of the mix that we were desiring through the terms of reference, but at the same time, I look at the credentials of the people and go, well, actually, yeah, that would be exactly the right kind of energy that we would want to bring into it. I do particularly note the Indigenous business, and I know we put this out through rap channels and other things, so it's not through lack of trying. But I do wonder if that is an area where we should be quite open to an additional position being created should we find someone at any stage that is willing to take up that business, because that is certainly a growing opportunity in destination marketing. So I'm sure you're going to phrase this as some sort of broad brush question.
Well, I'll put it to staff. Have we ever considered processes other than EOIs? Processes that might be more inclusive in terms of catching people, because the EOI is a very particular skill set in itself to put yourself forward. So it's a kind of question for future consideration.
Good question. I don't know, would it be too major? I'm going to ask advice of the CEO, but on the microphone. Too major an amendment to add a point that says that we would be happy to leave a space for an Indigenous tourism representative, should one be able to be identified, kind of thing? Is that too big of a amendment to add on the run?
Sorry, through the chair, it's your working group. At the end of the day, you can put on there whoever you want. I would suggest that maybe in the first instance, so officers take these comments away and see if we can't find someone, and when we do, bring it back for consideration at the time.
Sounds reasonable to me. Good discussion. Any further commentary on this, or are we ready to put it to a vote? Okay. So it's unamended. The names you have to imagine are now written in there. In terms of making this public, I wonder, if somebody is listening online right now and they're thinking what names are in those boxes, whether we in fact want to now name those people. in here.
Protocol would be the vote first and then
Yep.
to identify the names after the vote.
Sounds like a good idea. All right, so all those in favour? Yep, and against? Councillor Groom against, as flagged, and we'll now populate the names in there and then I'll read them out because I don't have a confidential agenda in front of me and I need you to write them in. Quick piece of procedural business. Perhaps we can come back and just revisit this decision after we've taken the next one as a quick review for anyone watching online. Which brings us to seasonal trading policy. So I will move the officer's recommendation, noting the proposed amendment by Councillor Groom. If I can get a seconder for that, and then we'll go into the amendment and discussion. Hang on, am I moving the amended officer's recommendation? It's not the committee recommendation, is it? It's the amended officer's recommendation. No. Am I moving the amended officer's recommendation? The seasonal trading, as in the 6 months one, but where you got the dates from? Okay, sorry, good. So I'm moving the committee recommendation and then we're going to your amendment, which was the one where we talked about dates. Okay, did I get a seconder? Councillor Kamada? All right. Do you want to maybe go straight to your amendment, Councillor Groom?
I would like to. I'd like to move an amendment as circulated that instead of the proposed 3-month lease periods, we look at 6-month lease periods. We can talk about the nuances of date separately, but that's the principle of the amendment. If there's a seconder.
Seconded by Councillor Lorver.
If I may talk to that, the logic, and my fellow councillors have seen the logic, so for the gallery. So I was concerned that the proposal for 3-month leases had 2 drawbacks. One is that it creates an immense workload for our staff because we're always in the process of assessing an application or assisting someone to get set up or finalising a lease and getting a new one in place. And businesses like this take a little while for people to know they're there and try them out and word of mouth and build up, and it just seemed that we weren't really going to get the maximum value out of that. And then if we look at the side for a business operator, people are investing in whatever their offering is. They're recruiting staff. They're doing marketing. For a 3-month period, that's not worth it. And I was worried that we may not get the calibre of offerings that we wanted if it wasn't worth the business proposition. So I'm proposing that we really just think about it as a summer activation and a winter activation, which really is the way the beach is used. So kind of from late April to early May, sometime after the Easter holidays, we move into winter mode. And then, late October, early November, we move back into summer mode. So we're kind of dealing with not quite 6 months. I don't think it falls entirely evenly, but something like that. And I welcome the proposal. Otherwise, I think this idea of creating opportunities for innovative businesses to activate all around the year, attracting some interesting winter ideas as well is great. But I just think this is more viable for both staff and for the businesses themselves.
Thanks, Councillor Groom. So can I confirm the dates that we're looking at on the screen are the dates that you are happy to move? Yeah, cool. Councillor Lover is seconded. Did you want to speak next, or were there any?
Oh, no, they're not.
Okay. Well, we might go to Councillor Pemberton while we fix the dates.
Right.
They're right.
Yep.
Good. Okay, Councillor Pemberton.
Thank you. I had a question, and I think it did come up in FPOL generally in terms of the application fee, how that was come up with, and whether it was reflective of the cost to us to actually process these. And I guess also just with this amendment in mind, I'm curious as to whether or not the fees should be adjusted or whether or not, it's sort of a up to 6 months as opposed, how you propose to actually do the financial side of this in order to make it affordable to operators, but also at least cover the cost of staff to administer it.
Good question.
Through the chair, so the application fee itself is an administrative fee, and that's part of our standard set of fees and charges. There's also an additional fee on top, which is the actual, I guess, license fee, if you want to call it that. We can certainly pro-rata that if there's a shorter period of time in which the operator was to be there.
Just a follow-on question. In the report, it has on page 45, it's got $1,500 per season when the proposal was 4 seasons a year. Just whether or not you think that needs to be amended to reflect the 2 longer seasons a year.
Yes, through the chair, we would need to amend that.
Is that in the recommendation? Cool. Would we want to put that in the amendment to be included in the recommendation? So we might think about adding some words to the amendment to say amend fees accordingly. So we'll just work up some words on that. Other speakers on this item? So maybe just add a few things. I was unclear, and I'm clearer now that you can have multiple seasons on top of each other. It's not that you can't have more than one season. So I think obviously the trial that we did with the sauna got quite a lot of attention, but if the sauna operator was to apply for summer and winter, there's nothing precluding them under this policy to have summer and winter continuously. So that's something just, I guess, to be aware of. But there are also some criteria in here around what we're looking for people to be doing. So things like sustainability might be a question in terms of, generators and things like that. It doesn't. This isn't about food vendors or coffee vans or anything else. It's another question that I had, but it is just for people with interesting and different ideas, which might be renting segways or beach umbrellas or SUPs or having those baths that they have at the 10 nights in port all winter round, which I think would be extremely popular if anyone's listening out there. There were some questions I had that helped me clarify what I was thinking on this. Okay, so we've now got that up on the screen as part of your amendment, I think, Councillor Groom now. Do you want to just agree that's... Yep. Cool. So Councillor Groom's amendment is now the dates and the amendment to the fees. If we're comfortable, we'll vote on the amendment.
The dates still are not correct. The ones that Councillor Grimm sent through were like 8th November, the 20th.
Okay. Cool. And we're happy. All right. All those in favour of the amendment as printed? That looks to be unanimous. Good amendment. Back to the item as amended. Any further discussion? Councillor Sullivan?
It's more of a question. I'm just wondering, sometimes when we put in place these sort of categories and rules and regulations and the like, to what degree there's going to be flexibility in the terms of the way staff can treat them. So, for example, when you're dealing with seasonal matters, the seasons don't always speak to dates, and some activities might like to squeeze another month in because the weather this year is different to what they were expecting and like. So I'm just wondering whether there needs to be any sort of flexibility written into this, or does it just sort of common sense prevail and it's treated like a policy, and a month extension here or there or slightly different dates here or there would be reasonable. And also another question while I'm asking them, the application dates are typically 2 months before the season starts. Can you explain how long it takes to make the decision and then how long the person has to set something up? because obviously there's a bit of a lead time for any business to actually activate their business, and I just worry a bit that we sometimes make our decision and then something doesn't happen for a month or 6 weeks because we haven't made our decision early enough.
Okay, we'll take those two questions. Do you want
Through the chair, so that really depends on the type of application. So if it's quite a mobile temporary vendor on a trailer that's easily movable, and there's not a huge amount of health or planning requirements associated with assessing that particular uh, operator or proposal, then it's quite quick. We could possibly turn that around in a number of days if they're aligning with the criteria. If it's something more like a shipping container that can't be easily removed in an instant, we would have to then go through a bit more assessment from a planning and health perspective. And yeah, that really does depend on how long it would take to get through those processes operationally. So, yeah. Flexibility on the dates is a common sense approach. So we'll work with the operator based on their particular situation.
Just if I can ask another question, if that's all right. So in terms of a new idea, and I guess it applies particularly to new ideas. If you already have your facility, it's pretty easy. But for new ideas, is there a process that someone can come in and actually talk about that well in advance, and actually get closer to whatever conditions might be applicable if they happen to win an EOI?
Absolutely. Our advice would probably be that if you do have an idea, come and engage with us first before you enter into the process. And given there is a process every 6 months, there's always an opportunity to come around every 6 months to engage in the process.
And that be made crystal clear in the documentations, the things that people see before they even approach someone on staff. Because sometimes we're talking about operators who perhaps have a different approach to many business people in the way in which they come up with ideas and prefer to implement them. So clarity and transparency would seem to be really important.
Good points and questions. All right. If there's no further discussion, any other speakers listed? I will put this one to the vote. All those in favour? And that appears to be unanimous. Thank you. Okay. So that brings us to Fremantle Oval. You might have seen I sent an email suggesting that we might request a deferral. I might request a deferral on this one. I still need to move second and then defer, I'm assuming. Yeah, so I'll move the officer's recommendation. Can I get a seconder for that? Councillor Pemberton. So perhaps if I can just open with why, for those who haven't read the email, why I think we should look at a deferral. It came to my attention probably in a way the wrong way around, in terms of I looked at the list, I filled it with names in my head, and I said, oh dear, these are all blokes. And it challenged me then to go, well, hang on, is this actually the broadest? So we're not hitting the diversity target on a gendered sense, but also, is it a diverse enough group of people to really vision the future of what we want for Fremantle Oval? And my concern is that it's very football focused, and I think that oval has lots of potential for lots of things, and certainly when we're talking about the redevelopment and not just the playing surface, we should have a more diverse group talking about it. So I was very much thinking, well, events and tourism and destination stuff, Notre Dame, like, it'd be great if they were part of the conversation about the facilities. We had big conversations with Fremantle Hospital for a while about Fremantle Oval. Where are they? And also we don't have a community representative at the moment on this. So I think it would be worthwhile just spending a little bit more time. There's no urgency with this, to go away and just have a think about the membership of this group and bring it back to council maybe next month. maybe next month or maybe the month after, but there is no real driving urgency. I think it's better that we get it right because this is a significant project for us that we would really like to have the right people in the room in that project group. So I'm happy to go to any discussion if people want to do that. Otherwise, I will move a deferral. Yep, Councillor Grimm.
Oh, I'm highly supportive because I looked at that list and I was really surprised that it was us having a conversation with footy and that's it. So yeah, I really welcome a deferral and a much kind of rounder look at that membership.
Councillor Sullivan.
Thanks.
I can't debate a deferral, so we're going to discuss it and then. Sorry, go on, Councillor Sullivan.
I'm reasonably comfortable with the idea of having, I guess, effectively the steering group being the main the main occupiers of the oval. But I also accept that if you think about many other processes, you have a small executive group that actually is looking at the decision-making part of things. It's very much a steering process. And then you also have a broader community-based, which includes a lot of the users and a lot of people that might have an interest, but not specifically in terms of buying in or leasing or the like. So they're interest groups and they're a reference group. And I wonder, I don't mind the idea of a reference group. I think it would be wonderful. I think it would be important. But I also don't want it to be so large that you don't have a decision, not a decision making, but a body that is small enough that it can clearly go through the strategic recommendations that are going to need to be made as well. So I'm just wondering, I know this sounds like it's a bit sort of planning on the run, but the amendment is as well. So I'm wondering whether you're going to end up with a list that that is so much longer that it has 15 people on it, and a 15 or 20 person group is probably going to be really, really challenging. So perhaps if I can ask that almost as a question in terms of the manageability of expanding the group, whether the staff have an opinion on that or different models.
To be clear, I'm moving a deferral, not an amendment. So those are the points on which I would move the idea of a deferral. But my suspicion would be that we would have a conversation offline about, at an IEM or something about what is the best structure. Because I think your points are really valid, but I don't know that this deferral will, bear any weight in terms of that discussion.
I think the question to the staff is still valid.
Sure.
I mean, I guess get a feeling that time, whether time is an issue, and also the workability is an issue.
Sure.
Through the chair, certainly you don't want an unwieldy group trying to make some key recommendations to council. But you do, we are getting to what I would consider the more pointy end of this conversation. You do want some bigger conversations going on that involve greater stakeholder input. My initial reaction to this is we probably could do better at putting this group together, and maybe it is a little bit monocultured. So looking at that is certainly worth doing. And I agree. I think as officers come back, and probably that's why I hummed a little bit at whether we get back in December, there may need to be a bit of a bigger lens put on first and decide if there's a little bit of a hierarchical structure to how we put this together as well.
Further discussion? Okay, I'm going to move a deferral. So do I have a seconder for the deferral? Councillor Groom. All those in favour of a deferral? Yeah. I think that was unanimous. Yeah, okay. So deferral, and we're deferring it to the next, appropriate committee or council meeting. And hopefully the reasons for deferral were clear enough in the email that I sent around. Okay. Two more items. We might just keep working through the items, I think, because probably people will want a comment. So I'll move the officer's recommendation on FPOL 221111, electric vehicle subscription contract. Seconder for that one, Councillor Lang. Is there any discussion on this one? No, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Budget amendments, FPOL 221112. I'll move the officer's recommendation. Seconded by Councillor Bolt. Any discussion? Councillor Groom.
So I had a question for officers during the week with regard to the budget amendments. So there are some items in the budget amendments that are not one-off in nature, particularly some new staffing positions, which could have the effect of committing council to some quite significant recurrent expenditure. So I had questions about, I guess, whether they were all full-time permanent positions and what that impact would be, just so that we are understanding that we're not just making a commitment about the surplus that's currently available, but this has consequences for future budgets. Now, I am going to caveat that I'm not saying no to no new staff, because I'm really aware of the incredible workload that our staff are under and the consequences of, you know, forever saying no and at the same time asking more. But I do think it is contingent on us in that decision making to understand the implications of this particular set of recommendations.
Do you want to comment on that one, or yeah?
Through the chair, I believe the CEO provided a bit of detail during the week, but there certainly are some of those staffing positions that would be an ongoing commitment in future budgets.
I think a great deal of the commitment for staff is to commit to the traineeship programs, which are a 24-month proposition that we're undertaking with TAFE and some other councils around the local region. And there are some other areas where we've looked at putting in fixed-term positions just to get us over the hurdle with a few things, business improvement, risk and the like. So we've don't undertake these decisions lightly. We do know that they have ongoing consequences for budgets moving forward. Trying to make sure we get over some hurdles now and hopefully in 2 years' time get the chance to reassess. One of the things we always discuss in ELT is to make sure that where we can identify resources that we can gain as well, that we keep throwing them back into the pot, so it's not a continuous build and growth of FTE count, that we're actually trying to manage the boutiqueness of Fremantle in a way that gets us without having to expand our FTE count to achieve things.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I do acknowledge the immense work that executive do to try and curtail that. And, you know, I think I've expressed before that I'm sometimes concerned about the impact of staff on that. So, yep, again, not having a go, just wanting to understand. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Graham. Councillor Busick.
Okay, I've been on the finances for some time now, and what I'm going to say about the budget amendments this evening doesn't take away from the appreciation that the administration does. But the point that I want to make is the financials as presented lack transparency and accuracy. It's only 4 months since we passed the 22-23 budget. And then this evening we are going to look at 20 pages of amendments. We could fix this where we have accuracy and transparency if we moved, and I'm not suggesting you know, 3 or 6 months, but to make some movement towards a proper accrual accounting system. Now, the Fremantle Council is no orphan in the fact that other councils, you know, some do accrual a system, some people don't. We do a partial. We would have transparency at a glance because we would be comparing the previous year's budget to the current budget. It would give us context and give us some certainty from month to month. The financial transparency relies on numbers, not words. I always get a little bit nervous because numbers is a language of its own. It doesn't need a lot of words to explain it. Our practice of using amended budgets is just poor practice. It gives us what we're faced with. I'm not going to go through 20 pages of budget amendment because I know there are going to be some amendments the next month and the next month and the next month. No point in it. Now, if I have a look at the agenda, page 69 of 131, it reports that this year's adopted budget has an opening surplus of 8.9 million. There is a lack of accurate information here because this declaration, that's all it is, of 8.9 million of 22 is yet to be audited. Until we have these figures audited, we really don't know the accuracy of it. It could be $1, it could be $1 million, it could be $8.9 million. I don't know. So for me to engage in any serious financial accuracy here, it's just a waste of time. I remember the $5 million cost overrun for the Civic Centre architects. Even today, I have no explanation of how we got there. But geez, $5 million left the ratepayers' purse. The reference to an additional surplus of 5.3 in that same page 69 is just not believable. The additional 5 million surplus may come from the period of July to October 22. It's just not believable. The additional 5 million more likely represents delayed projects. It doesn't mean you have another 5 million surplus. The adopted budget of 22-23 is predicated on the sale of Quarry Street for 4.9 million. This year it is already short, 4.9 million. When I asked in this chamber how the budget will be balanced if Quarry Street is not sold, the response was wordy, which is always a worry. However, the last sentence is worthy of sharing. Depending on the amount of funds in investment reserve and the progress of the projects, alternative funding may need to be sought for these projects. Once again, very wordy. The monthly financial statements for the investment reserve this year for July is reported as zero. August, it's reported as 13,806. September has about $10,000. And there was even a negative balance reported on. My interpretation of this sentence is that there is no investment reserves left, that we will need to get some more money, maybe identify another asset to sell, or delay some projects to get the illusion that we have a surplus. I guess I'm going to have these conversations on a regular basis. This is the reason why I can't, it's very frustrating, but I can't vote for these budget amendments. But I do have a question. The Auditor General's report on the status and timeliness of the 2021 audit has listed that the City of Fremantle as, in inverted commas, extension or statutory deadlines were not met. My question is, have you submitted the draft financials of 22 financial statements to the auditors to avoid the significant delays of last year?
Who wants that one? Yep, over to you, Matt.
Through the chair, so we are currently working through the audit and about to finalise the audit for this year, and we have submitted those statements.
So that's a yes.
Yes.
Thank you. We look forward to them. I look forward to seeing the $8.9 million surplus. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors? Councillor Archibald.
Thank you. I just wanted to make the comment that with reference to Quarry Street, I think it was 4.9 million, that's actually going into reserve. It's not it's not going to be used for recurrent funding, and it never was. It was always in the budget as going to reserve. So I just wanted to clarify that. It's not going to be used for everything else. Thank you.
Can I just respond to that?
Okay. No, you can only speak once, so unless you have a question. Councillors, further commentary? Okay. Councillor Groom.
I wanted to note that in our pages of amendments that they include 10 grants that staff have secured for various works and priorities around the city. So, yeah, a real credit to staff for securing that income, and it's a pleasure to adjust budgets in that direction.
Perhaps I'll segue on from Councillor Groom's comments. I was going to note similar and say that budgets aren't a static in time process. If we just did once a year, let's apply for grants and see if we get them or not, that would be a somewhat, disappointing process in which we would gain much less funding from other sources than we do with current practices, which is to go for grants all year round and amend the budget accordingly. I think looking at sort of where we've ended up with the surplus, I mean, it really is the unpredictability of COVID in terms of, starting to get more revenue in probably quicker than we thought, and also not being able to spend capital in a way that we would have maybe hoped we might be able to. So I'm really happy. I think everyone should read through the list of budget amendments because it is a bunch of stuff that we said we really wanted. It's renewal of community infrastructure, it's footpaths, it's a whole lot of back to basics type things that, if I recall our budget process, people around the table were really, really advocating for. So I think good governance is about setting a direction really clearly. And I think we've done that to the extent that officers have come back to us and says, as soon as we have an opportunity, we want to start delivering on some of these things. So it's, you can call the accounting standard into question. You can do all these kind of things. At the end of the day, these officers are available to us to explain anything we don't think we understand. I was disappointed that nobody put up their hand to say, well done on getting an FHI of 94 this year. All right, so I will put the budget amendments to the vote. All those in favour? And against? Councillor Vusic against. That's carried. Okay, into the C items. Did anyone want to pull out particularly any of the C items to speak to?
I'll be consistent. Monthly statements.
Yep, speak or vote separately. Okay, so I'll move. Which ones am I moving? 2 and 3. On block. The items 2 and 3 on block, seconded by Councillor Lang. All those in favour? I'll move C22111, the monthly financial report, seconded by Councillor Archibald. Did you wish to speak to that or just vote separately?
Very briefly. Carrying on from the budget amendments, I've asked this at FPOL. What would be very useful every month is to have a summary. Cash flow in, cash flow out. It would help a lot. I think if we are really keen on continuous improvement, as we all should be, I think the council ought to provide another tool. It's not a great deal of work to do that, and it would go a long way to tempering that transparency and accuracy issue that I believe we have. My question is, would we be able to have that monthly statement?
Happy to put that over.
Through the chair, we're happy to look into how we could start reporting in that way, and we'll come back to you after we've looked into it.
Thank you. I guess the only other question, you've got the officer's recommendation is to receive the monthly financial report. Why couldn't we use, is this an accurate and true report? Because by accepting it, that's implying it, and I could pick out a dozen mistakes in here. Could we not also look at being a little bit more specific?
I'm happy to put that to the CEO, but I feel like we've had this conversation before. Yeah.
Look, we believe that the recommendation fits the set of statements we're putting up. Obviously, we put them in a report. We believe they're accurate. I guess it's on council's prerogative on whether they're prepared to vote for them or not.
All right, Councillor Archibald.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a comment. I think the wording in there is it accepts the report? Receives the report. Sorry, because I just couldn't pull that up quickly enough. But receive doesn't infer that you approve it or that you say everything in it is correct. All you are doing is receiving it. So if that's what it says, then there is no inference by anybody that it is good, bad, or indifferent, or incorrect or correct.
Well, that's interpretation, one interpretation. The other one is it can be inferred.
Well, I'm going to put this one to a vote. All those in favour? And against? Councillor Busick against, and that's carried. Councillor Pemberton, you have a notice of motion you would like to move. Excellent. Have you a seconder? Councillor Jones? Okay, I'll go back to the mover. Okay. Why don't we get it up on the screen and you can start talking to it.
Okay, sorry, I'm going to speak to the motion, the original notice of motion as published in the agenda.
Yep. As per committee. Yep. Go for it.
Yeah, sorry, we will come to that. I'm not going to move it. Yes, I acknowledge that. Yeah, so look, thank you for the committee's support on this one. I do think it's a really important piece of work, and I think it is about consolidating commitments and decisions that have already been made by this council. I also just note it's become quite timely in the sense that today, literally, the 2022 State of the Climate Report was released by the CSIRO and the Bureau of Meteorology, and they've come out with some of the most forceful kind of direct language that I can recall them sort of speaking to these issues and so on, around the fact that climate change is not coming, it's here now, and it identified the fact that the average temperature across Australia has increased by 1.47 degrees in the last 110 years. So we're already kind of moving quite significantly towards more dangerous bushfires that will rage for longer, torrential downpours that will become more common, and unrelenting heat waves that will devastate communities across Australia. That comes from their report and statement and so on. So I do think that it is becoming literally a climate emergency, which of course this council adopted in March 2021. Also noting the decision that was passed by council last month, the month before, with regards to the issue and advertising of fossil fuels and so on. I think it's really important to recognise that, you know, it's not just about words and symbolism and so on. It's about advocating and leading on these issues that we know are deeply important that we address, but also doing what we can within our sphere of influence and the things that we can change. And so this notice of motion really speaks towards doing that. Recognising, of course, that we did actually adopt the Corporate Energy Plan in 2017, and it does have a really ambitious and excellent target to reach 100% renewable energy for our electricity supply by 2025. So recognising that that's not far off, but we haven't really looked at this and reviewed this report got a report back and an update on this report in the way that it was originally intended. So it is about just refocusing our attention on making sure that this plan that was adopted is actually being put into place, and that we are actually mapping our progress and making sure that we can achieve that. I also wanted to kind of speak more generally towards this concept of electrifying everything and the fact that there's this growing kind of movement towards doing that, because recognizing that obviously that frees you up to get energy from a whole range of sources, obviously including a range of options for renewable energy. Yesterday there was some news reports that were also quite pertinent around the impact of gas, and gas has very long time been promoted as the cleaner, or I guess the least worst fossil fuel. But there's some really interesting evidence and data coming out at the moment. And yesterday there were various people in the media talking about how if you have gas connection in your home, it's actually like living with a smoker in terms of the impact on your health, and particularly children's health. So recognizing that gas and some of these other kind of so-called transition fuels are not actually as clean, safe, or healthy as we've previously thought. So this is really around recognising that we need to show leadership in this regard, but we also need to do what we can for the health and well-being of everybody within our facilities and so on. And also recognising that electricity is becoming cheaper. Fossil fuels are becoming more expensive. We've obviously seen the extraordinary amount of growing costs of petrol and gas and so on, and yet the cost of clean electricity in particular is coming down. Not only that, but electricity is actually far more efficient than burning fossil fuels for energy use. So you end up with a lot less wastage, and therefore it becomes, again, a saving to the organisation, as well as reducing our emissions, which of course we offset through purchasing offsets. So this will actually go towards improving not only reducing our carbon emissions, but also reducing the costs associated with doing business. So I think that's all I want to say on that at the moment.
Thank you. Councillor Jones?
Yeah, I just reiterate what I said at FPOL. It was an interesting coincidence that Councillor Pemberton moved this motion, because at the time I was approached by the people talking about the lease of the Northmantle Bowling Club, and to say what can they do to make sure the council in its refurbishment doesn't replace things with gas-operated hot water, gas-operated cooking, and so on. So that kind of reminded me to check that with the staff, because that they have a commitment to become carbon neutral and off-grid if possible, so over the longer term. But I just wanted to add to this, a reminder to staff that when they're looking at refurbishing council properties, this really should be very much in the front of their mind. And the point was made that it's very hard to persuade hospitality people to turn over to induction. But interestingly, this campaign that started yesterday shows a lot of quite celebrity chefs using induction and trying to counter that argument. So, and explaining how it's much easier to clean down at the end of the night. So I thought that was interesting, and I think we should be going ahead as quickly as possible with the audit of where we have facilities with gas, hot water, gas cooking. Induction's now quite cheap, and certainly very cheap to run. So that's happy to support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Grimm?
Thank you, Councillor Pemberton, for bringing this motion, and thank you for the opportunity to contribute a little bit. And certainly what interests me is not just what can we do, but what can we do to encourage and support our community. And Councillor Lang recently brought a proposal to Planning Committee to try and make a small change to the efficiency of homes, and I'm hopeful we can use something like this to kind of get broader change through simple incentives for people to electrify. So thank you, I'm very supportive.
Councillor Archibald, did you?
Thank you. As people know, I did move an amendment. That amendment has changed so that mine is now just part 3 of this if it's together. And the reason that I put the amendment together, I have mentioned it, reasons for change here in the information that was circulated. So the amendment is really just the main paragraph that I did put together. Is because I think there's real opportunity for us to look not only at how energy can be used or offset or whatever. But there are many other things that need to be seriously looked at now across the board, including how we engage with other local governments and how we also engage with state and federal government. There are many initiatives. One good example is the way in which the Western Australian state government is managing renewable energy in the grid. And at the moment, there are many buildings which produce an awful lot of electricity but aren't yet able to be connected. So, you know, the information that I'm putting together is really saying that there are other things now, and certainly it came out of the IPCC, that there are many other opportunities where we can look at other technologies as well.
Councillor Archibald, I'm just going to interrupt you to see if you've got a seconder.
Sorry.
That's all right. You got into your flow. Councillor Groom, thanks. Carry on.
Sorry, I didn't pay enough attention. The other point is that we do have newly appointed newly appointed sustainability officer, which means that we will also be able to take the opportunity to seriously have a good look at how we review a whole range of things within our organisation and how we relate to our community and what else we might do. That includes many of the other things that were raised by the IPCC and the CSIRO report and the COP27 initiatives that came out of that. So I think, you know, having discussed this with the staff, and certainly I'm very pleased to have the Director of Planning make a comment here on this, but I think there's a real opportunity that while we are doing this work, and this has a deadline which is to be delivered by June, but my amendment does not have a deadline. I think it's worth that we would continue for some time, but it will mean that we can raise a lot of these things in that process on the way through. It would also be part of our strategic community plan work, but I think initially, as elected members, it would be really good for us to sort of have a good discussion about what our other opportunities are. I just also wanted, I mean, the issue of how we have warmed, I'm just going to mention this because it's kind of quite alarming when you think that in the late 19th century, I think it was 1880s or something, a Eunice, no doubt, not a man, a Eunice Newton Foot, published a paper suggesting that there was a build-up of carbon in the Earth's atmosphere that could cause increased surface temperatures. That was published in the late 1800s. And it was not until 1938 that a British engineer, Guy Callender, was able to consolidate the link between carbon dioxide in the atmosphere and global warming. It's an issue that's been around for that long. The Paris Agreement, 2015, 196 parties signed up to that agreement, and we still have not shifted anything getting it away from more than 1.5 degrees. In fact, we are now on target to overshoot that. So the recent UN reports suggest that we're very unlikely to meet those targets and that current policies, as they exist today, are likely to cause temperatures to increase up to 2.8 degrees this century. So it sort of makes me feel like, yes, we need to have another serious look at this, but on our own, we are very unlikely to make a substantial difference. Australia, Japan and New Zealand, with all the output that we put out, totals 4% of the global greenhouse gas emissions. But and each individual in this country, and I made a mistake in my reasons that were circulated. We have an output of 13 tonnes of greenhouse gas per person. That's babies, children, adults, 13 tonnes per person. This is second only to the United States, which is 17. The lowest is Southeast Asia at 2.6. Africa is next at 3.9. And I just kind of feel like we're a wealthy, educated, prosperous nation, and we have ample capacity to do far more. So I sort of feel like it's a bit like frogs in the pond. It's warming up, and we're not really, I mean, we need to just do more. We need to really connect to other local governments across Australia Many people are talking about this. When I did some research online, there's heaps of stuff out there, lovely statements about these are the things we can do. But if you look at what's happening with climate change on the East Coast, in New South Wales, of the 128 local authorities, 85% of those authorities have incurred damage from the impacts of sustained rainfall. Those impacts are just going to be mind-boggling for the cost of rebuild. And not only that rainfall is now going downstream, and it's now starting to impact other local authorities in South Australia. So even in a drying phase in our community here, we could see impacts on our urban forest, on the abilities of our buildings to handle increased temperatures in summer, the impacts on our community, and even our own outdoor workers who have to be out in the heat doing things. More than 90% of the bushland in our greater metropolitan area has been removed. So every piece of urban bushland should be retained. One of the things the IPCC and COP both said was the significance of vegetation is really important in how we can mitigate these issues that are coming. So there is a really urgent need. I fully support what Councillor Pemberton has put up. I also feel this is just a signal to say we need to seriously start looking again at what else we can do. Where did we get to? With the last 10 years, some fabulous work was done. How much did we really achieve out of that? Do we need to do more? What can we do? And there are new technologies there now. There's good information. We need to have a look at what else is available. And that would also go down to our planning infrastructure, the way in which we look at planning approvals coming in. I did read somewhere that the City of Vincent, is it? Or Town of Vincent? Can't remember. Anyway, they have a life cycle analysis that's part of every planning application. That was quoted in one document I read. Whether they still do it, I don't know. But it's just, I guess, that message. Everything you do is going to incur a carbon cost, and so that's why I'm putting up this amendment. I fully support Councillor Pemberton's section, but I think this is a sort of section for us to say, right, we now also need to be very visible about what else we can do, visible to our community, but also heaps of advocacy across the board to try and get better action where we can, in whatever way we can, and somehow bring that 13 per person in Australia back down to something far more reasonable. So that's the purpose of it, and I hope that people will support it, and I'm happy if the Director of Planning wanted to make a comment about it.
Or Jenny, yeah, if you can pop yours off.
Is that me on? Yeah. Through the chair, I can confirm, as Councillor Archibald indicated, we do now have a senior sustainability officer, which is really very exciting. We have had resource challenges in that area over the last few months, and the new incumbent is certainly doing a thorough review of our policy framework, and I think the timing for this addition to the notice is actually very good. We would be ready to come to Council, whether it's through an IEM in December or January, to start opening up a broader debate, which I don't think would take anything away from the main thrust of this notice.
Thank you. Councillor Busick.
Look, I can't disagree with anything that's been said in this chamber regarding looking after our environment. Climate change is definitely there. But where I have some difficulty with is the fact that we're focusing on climate change. We want the green energy. Of course, we all want the green energy. We want to make that transition as painless as we possibly can. We want to engage everyone in the green narrative. But I just find that there is a lack of balance here. There's a lack of balance in the timeline. There's also a lack of balance in the cost. Now, when we're looking at, and I've said this before in the chamber, when we're looking at the wind turbines and the solar. We're mining the earth. Third world countries are mining precious and rare minerals that are going to go into this alternative electricity. It's creating, for millions of people, very low-paid people, a misery in their lives. We don't have a plan. When the solar and the wind panels are decommissioned, what are we going to do with them? Indeed, even with our domestic solar panels, we don't have a strategy of what we're going to do with them. So when we look at the whole issue of sustainability, it's a lot more complex than, let's electrify renewable energy here at our local Fremantle in 2025. One, I don't think it'll be achievable. Two, we don't have the money, and if we do put the money into that, some other community programs are going to disappear as a result of that. So once again, I'm very much into sustainability, into environment, but I don't treat it like a religion. It's not a religion for me. I don't want to impoverish 1/3 of the emerging world who will be denied free, cheap, accessible energy, which are fossil fuels, during their lifetime, so that they can have a better life. After all, we've got a better life. So I take that quite seriously, because you would be impoverishing a lot of people who will never be able to make the green commitments. And if you want to have a look at a disaster, have a look at Sri Lanka and what happened there. So, if you have a look, my wider research looks at, yes, we're going to make green energy through sustainable 60% into our grids. We'll still be dependent on fossil fuels. 100 years is more like where we'll be hitting 100%. And I think a lot of good technology and a lot of good investments will happen during that time. I'm confident that we'll make that transition, but I don't support a transition when I know it's not going to. I can make that transition a lot easier than many, many other people can. So for me, it's more of a balanced argument. I won't support it. It's just too narrow for me.
Councillor Lang, still on the amendment?
Thanks. Yeah, sorry to, it might seem like a nitpicking thing, but just reading through our corporate energy plan, the focus has not been on greenhouse gas output, it's been on carbon emissions. And if we are writing a report and it's focused on greenhouse gas emissions, we're going to then all of a sudden be looking at a whole range of other elements. So I'm just wondering if the mover of the amendment may consider just changing greenhouse gas to carbon to align with our corporate energy plan.
No, because this is not really. This is looking at all the other plans that we have in our organisation, such as the One Planet documents and all the other documents. There's a number of documents that relate to the issue of greenhouse gases, which is to do with global warming. So Councillor Pemberton's motion is specifically dealing with the energy plan, and she has framed that so that we get a report back in June. Mine is a project that's more open-ended. It'll be a longer-term project. It'll also flow through to the community strategic plan. So it does deal with greenhouse gases entirely.
Councillor Lang, just to go to your point, I have had or have some concerns about the marrying of these two somewhat different things in a motion, because I think one of them is in relation to the corporate energy plan, and this is, and I'll speak to that myself, but I've accepted on the basis that the mover is comfortable having this third part as part of this motion. I've accepted that, but I'm not 100% comfortable with it. So perhaps noting, I guess, where your thinking might be going. Did you want to follow on from there? Mic on.
Just thought I'd flag it as the whole thing is centering around the corporate energy plan, and although that is focused on carbon. But that's fine.
Just a reminder to everyone, keep your mics pretty close to your face. I've had some feedback from people online that they would like to hear you all equally. So I'm really line ball about this without being line ball. Sorry, Councillor Pemberton, yeah, without being line ball about the intent, because I absolutely agree with all of the concerns that are being raised and with the intent to do this. My concern is more timing in terms of this is a very live and active conversation we're going to be having through the strategic community plan. And I guess one of my hopes with the strategic community plan process is that it results in a set of reporting that then reflects what the community has told us is important to them. So while we've had a deep dive workshop with a number of really expert people and members of the community to look at the issue of risk and resilience in the face of climate change, we haven't yet had the broader community engagement. And I guess I would hope that our reporting would be driven out of what the results of that broader community engagement tell us is important to people. You know, my kind of finger in the wind, where do I think that'll end up, is not far from what's on the screen here. But I think by preempting that, I just feel a little bit uncomfortable that a process where we really have invited people to kind of co-design and then agree what's important to them, you know, that my aspiration isn't that that becomes a plan on a shelf. It's that it becomes a tool that drives our regular reporting, our dashboard reporting, decisions that are made. So I've got a discomfort that I don't really know quite how to resolve at this point in terms of what is effectively setting up some new reporting regimes around greenhouse gas emissions. So tricky. I'll think about it. Councillor Pemberton, you had your mic on and turned it off. Councillor Groom has hers on.
Yeah, I kind of don't share the same reservations. Part of me is like, why do we even need to put this up? Isn't it what we're already all think we're doing? Clearly we're not. It's not well documented. And so for me, it states everything that I feel I've heard in this chamber in the 4 years I've been here as our principles, and certainly beforehand. I also kind of don't feel that it is committing us at this point to a whole lot of reporting. It's about review, you know, like to really make sure we've got that baseline and our activities right. So I'm pretty comfortable with it because I don't think it takes us anywhere new from where we all thought we were going, or certainly that's been my understanding. So.
Councillor Pemberton.
Thank you. And look, I was going to say similar to what you said, Chair, in the sense that I shared those concerns very much so. And I guess I also was concerned that this is potentially a very, very big piece of work. And I do worry about, you know, expanding the parameters of this notice of motion to the point where it becomes so big and hard to sort of put your finger on it. The original intention is lost, but Councillor Archibald has made significant reviews and changes of this so that I now actually feel, and it is kind of an on balance for exactly the reasons that have been said, I totally agree with the intention of this. I just wonder whether or not now's the right time or this is the right way to put this into the mix. But having had the feedback from staff and their assessment that this is a big piece of work, but one that they do think is possible to deliver, and it doesn't have that same time frame on it. It's been completely separated out from the work on the energy plan and the switch to electrify everything. Yet it feels like a really worthwhile piece of work to do in general. And I think, you know, some of our other processes that are already in place potentially actually go some way towards providing input into this as well. It's work that's going to be done anyway, such as the One Planet annual report that happens. And I know there's some, you know, new annual reporting on the urban forest plan, for example, and other things where we might actually be able to feed that into this kind of review. I also do think that this is a conversation that's likely to be very valuable as part of the community strategic plan. Now, maybe if some of this information is available, you know, to actually insert into that conversation to help guide discussions around where priorities should shift or resources should be put, then, you know, potentially it's useful. So I do thank Councillor Archibald for the effort she's gone to make the changes and so on, and I'm now actually happy to support it.
Useful debate, thanks. Any further speakers? Councillor Archibald, did you want to close on the amendment?
Just very briefly, that I did try to make sure that this didn't tell us when it had to be done by or how big it should be. It's really a discussion that we would have as elected members in other forums. So the scale of it is really going to be up to us in those forums, not here tonight. This is really just saying to the community that we want to get this back on the agenda so we can seriously look at whatever we can do that might be possible. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll put that one to a vote. All those in favour of the amendment? Yeah. And against? Councillor Vusic and Kamada against. Backs the item as amended. That's carried. Backs the item as amended. Further speakers?
Just a query.
Yeah.
Are we able to vote separately on 3? I mean, now that that's gone through.
Yep.
Yeah, because I'm comfortable with 1 and 2. I just think 3 is a step too far. That's okay.
Sure. Any further contributions to the debate before I put it to a vote? I was just reminded a few years ago, I think it was 2018, reading a company directors magazine, which is not probably the most progressive magazine in Australia. But they had a sort of really stark article just saying that boards that do not seriously plan for climate change and its impacts are at risk of being negligent. So I thought back in 2018 they were calling it out, and it does hopefully seem that the world is moving somewhat into a direction that it might have needed to have moved in a little quicker. All right, so I'll put parts 1 and 2 to a vote. All those in favour? That appears to be unanimous. And I'll put part 3 to a vote. All those in favour? And against? Councillors Kamada and Vusic against, so that is carried. That brings us to the end of the agenda. There's no urgent business, late items or confidential business that I'm aware of. Nobody's stopping me for anything, so that's good. So I'll close the meeting at 8:02 p.m. That was a very quick meeting. Just warning you, if you want to come back next month, pack a picnic.